And welcome to Empathy and Espresso podcast. I'm your host, Carrie. And with us today, we have Shanti Grossman, and she is going to go ahead and introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Shanti Grossman, and I am the founder and CEO, which is still a term that I am trying to step into. At A Brighter Year, we make mini coloring books that are simple and easy for adults.
Wonderful. I love that. And I follow a lot of women-owned businesses and women who are starting businesses. And one of them, have you heard of Curvy Beach? Okay.
No.
Liz Taylor at Curvy Beach. She started the company back in 2017, I think, and she calls herself the CEO, which I just always thought was really cool. So,
Well, I had someone recently that I was in kind of like a business meeting, and she was saying, like, as businesses scale, I find that most CEOs either gravitate more towards operations or more towards marketing. And I literally like turned around and I was like, who's the CEO here? And I was like, oh, that's me. That just sounds like way more professional than I think I actually am, right?
Yes. Yeah. I totally get it because, and it was like literally no offense to Nate, but when we were all deciding like our executive titles, and that's how I became the chief community officer at FreeMind, I was like, okay, so I'm the CCO and Johnny's the CTO. Like, Nate needs a chief title. We need a chief title for Nate. And Johnny's like, he's the CEO. And I'm like, oh, yeah, but we're so small and he's so approachable. You know, you don't think like it's the CEO of the company. It's like, it's Nate. It's my friend Nate. So,
Right.
know, like, I totally understand that because I was just like, face palm emoji in the group chat when when he said that. I'm like, obviously. I know.
Like a title seems to put more pressure on it for some reason, because like you don't see that as like you, right? As your company grows and you're like, wow, that makes us sound like really professional. Like, I don't know if that's what I signed up for when I started a business, right?
Yes. Yeah. No, I totally get it. Yeah, I know. Technically, I guess I'm the CEO of my company too, owner operator. Like,
Right.
I've been thinking about that too, like on resumes and stuff. How do you list that? And what do you list your title? And I'm like, me. It is me. Like, I am the company. So, okay. So thank you for that introduction. I do want to talk more about your coloring books and the mission behind your product. But first of all, I do have my typical icebreaker questions that I like to ask. So the first one is pretty easy. So we'll start you off not in the deep end. What is your favorite coffee? How do you take your coffee, or what's your favorite caffeinated beverage?
Okay, so my preferred caffeinated beverage is going to be an Americano that I make at home. And it's going to, because once we got an espresso maker at our house, my husband and I became like so picky about our coffee. And with the Sown oat creamer that is called Sweet and Creamy, that is like my jam right now.
Okay. And it's an oat milk creamer, you said?
Yeah, and the brand is Sown. It's SOWN, and I actually hadn't seen it before, but I just like one day, like I was like, oh sure, let's try this, and now I've been like obsessed for like 8 months. So.
Oh, nice. Okay. I love oat milk, and I usually get it in my coffee if I go somewhere, but I've bought a couple of the oat milk creamers. But lately my husband's just been buying the full milk. Like, I can't not have milk. I just prefer the oat milk flavor. As strangely as that sounds, like I'm not lactose intolerant, but I prefer it, and it's better for you, I think. So yeah, I'll have to look into that brand and see if we've got it all the way up here in the Midwest. So, okay. So next question. And I always start by saying I borrowed this, not stole it, but borrowed this question, or a version of this question, from Stuart Ralph, who does the OCD stories. Have you ever heard his podcast?
I have not, but I have someone in my family with OCD, so maybe I should listen to his
Highly
podcast.
recommend. It's actually the first podcast I got hooked on. And I have OCD and I talk about that a lot in this podcast. But what I really like about it and what drew me to applying for the job when Nate posted it at Freemind was that it's authentic storytelling in the podcast. And it's the same way with Stu. So he interviews people with OCD and people who treat with OCD. And there's a lot who are both people with OCD who also treat OCD. And it's just like, tell your story. And it's just open dialogue, just like what we're doing here. And he always asks a couple of questions, usually at the end as a wrap up. And this is one of the questions that he usually asks or that he rotates through. And I just really love it. But I like to use it at the beginning because I think it really helps get the conversation going. So that's a very long explanation to ask you a really quick question. So question is, if you could pick up the phone and call 20-year-old Shanti, what would you tell her and why?
I think I would tell her that no matter what you're going through, like at that very second, that day, or that like phase, you'll get through it. And I think that like we always know that we'll get through it, right? But sometimes it's like so hard, no matter what it is. I just feel like I was listening to another podcast recently, and she was talking about the book, The Pivot Year. And she was saying, I feel like as a mom, an entrepreneur, a business owner, she was like, I feel like every year is a pivot year because there's always something pivoting in my life. Like we crave like just to be like settled, right? But like I'm now realizing that you never are just, nothing's ever just like perfect and grounded and settled. I feel like something in your life is always moving, whether it be like family or kids or business, and you're growing, right? And growth can be uncomfortable.
It can be, yes.
And so I think, it would just be like, you'll get through it. Just like keep your head down, keep working, take care of yourself, take care of those around you, and like you'll get through it.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that like I remember being in high school and having adults in my life, like my grandma, who was kind of my biggest mentor and really raised me and taught me a lot of life skills in a lot of ways. She would always say, like, I'd be going through, 16, like drama, whatever. And she'd be like, oh, in 10 years, you won't even remember this. Like, your life is going to be so different. This is just going to be a blip. And back then, though, it feels like, oh my gosh, but 10 years, like that's an eternity from now. But now I'm looking back, 15 years later, or, 20 years later. And it's like, oh gosh, that time went by. And you're right. Like that stuff does not matter. I got through it, and it's not even like the most traumatic stuff that I remember, but I think so many young people are just like, that's so cliche. But if you had the ability to tell yourself that, like, look at us, we got through it. Like, that's what I think is so poignant about that question and about the answers that people give, is that when it's coming from you who have lived it, and you should trust yourself more than anyone else. I think that, I just wish that were possible. I wish time didn't exist on a linear plane.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. It's hard because it's like, I feel like there's always something different that we're like trying to get through, right? It's like, you never know what it's going to be: health, work, house issues, car issues. You never know what it's going to be, but just like, there's always going to be something, and you get through it somehow.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So what that I think segues us really beautifully into, because you're talking about getting through it and coping. And so I used to, as I told you before we started recording, and some of our listeners might know, I used to work at a rape crisis center. I worked there the bulk of my career, and that's where I first started in nonprofit leadership. And we actually used adult coloring books in our support groups, and we would give them as gifts to clients and things who needed help with the coping. And it's a very, very therapeutic tool. But I want to know like what your thinking process was and what was the inspiration behind your company and your coloring books.
Yeah. So once I had kids, I've been an entrepreneur my entire adult life. So I graduated from college with a degree in music business. I was in the music industry for a long time. And then I did a bunch of consulting with different nonprofits. The first one was music, but then it kind of rolled off. I worked with foster care for a while. I did one in like health and fitness. And so I've always been an entrepreneur or a consultant. But once I got to the point where I was like a business owner and I was a mom, that is like the most adulting. I feel like we had like gotten to the point where we were the most adulting, and we
100% agree. Yeah.
So we had 2 kids under 2, and I was a business owner, but the business was working out of our house. We didn't have full-time childcare. They were going to like a Mother's Day Out program, like 2 half days a week. So like I was juggling a lot, right? What I found is that what I needed at those times, I needed to take care of myself the most, but I had the least amount of time to take care of myself. And one of the things that I had always come back to my entire life, like I remember as a little kid, like going to pick out a coloring book or getting that fresh pack of crayons or all of those things, like those were always things that I would come back to. And what happened was I was an adult now. I have these adult coloring books and I hated them. They were way too detailed. I didn't have the time to sit down and color a page that was going to take me 3 to 5 hours to like complete it. I didn't have that much time. And decision fatigue was like so real in my life. Being a full-time caregiver of 2 toddlers and also being a business owner with employees, I just felt like I was making so many decisions every day just to keep things going that I was finding zero enjoyment out of coloring. And that was one of the things that I had always found like really comforting and really helped me, not only mentally, but I found fun, right? And so I finally was like, I want a coloring book that is targeted at adults, but simple and easy. And I couldn't find it anywhere. You could get simple and easy coloring books, but they're all for a kid. And I didn't want like the latest Pixar movie or the newest Disney kids TV show. Like those weren't the illustrations that were bringing me joy. I wanted something that was like simple and easy for adults. So
because most of the adult coloring books that I've seen and that I've used in my practice with clients are very abstract, complicated, complex designs like mandalas and spirals and things where it's very tedious, very small lines, not simple. You have to be concentrating on it fully.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
And then those coloring books were becoming a task or a to-do or like something that I was having to like, they were a lot of work, right? Yes. And a hobby is not supposed to be work. And so I was not finding enjoyment out of them. So the first product I actually ever released was a color by day coloring book calendar. And the pages were a little bit, they were bigger and they were more intricate, but the way that the pages are broken down is that every month has its own page and the page has little numbers on it. And the numbers align with the days of the month. So on August 1st, you only color this tiny little section of the page. Like this month, it was a sunshine. And on the 2nd, it was a seashell. And on the 3rd, it was like a beach towel. And by the end of the month, you have a fully colored page. But we broke it down into bite-sized pieces of like 3 to 5 minute coloring prompts. And the people who gravitate towards those coloring calendars are people who are very type A, who like want to do the same thing every single day. They love those. But also people who are trying to build in these little micro like mindfulness activities or
self-care,
build something into their schedule because it's a daily coloring prompt. It's like, it's on my schedule. I do it, but this is for me, right? And it's not going to take a lot of time. So that was our first product. And then I had a group of customers that came to me and said like, hey, I love these mini micro coloring prompts, but I want to choose my own schedule. So like sometimes I want to sit, like if I'm listening to a webinar or a podcast or something, I might want to sit down and color for an hour. Or if I am on a call or I just had a really stressful meeting, I might just want to color one page, but I don't want to be stuck to like a calendar schedule. So that was when I was like, all right. So I created my first mini coloring book, and they're 3 by 3 inches. The illustrations take just like 3 to 5 minutes to color, to complete. They're super simple. They have really bold lines. They're easy. They're fun. And then it's kind of a choose your own adventure. Do you want to do a lot or do you want to do a little? And the illustrations that you're going to find in there are like cute little cocktails or coffee cups or a tea kettle with a tea mug or a little sushi layout. You know, things that are plants, like house plants, birds, things that are a little bit more adult focused, but are super simple and easy. So I released the first mini coloring book, and then from there, the brand just really skyrocketed. From there, like we have a lot of people who still love the coloring calendars, but the mini coloring books are the things that sell all day, every day, and the things that people are coming back every 2 weeks. And like, I need more, I need more, I need more. And what I did not expect to happen when I created these coloring books was that I would have so many people come forward that said, like, I'm literally getting chills, just like when I tell people this. So many people that came forward that said, these coloring books are having like a real life impact on my life, like positive impact on my life. Have an immense amount of people with ADHD or ADHD being like, this is what my brain needed, and I didn't even know it. And it's become one of my favorite like go-to tools for that. I have a lot of people who are either caregivers of autistic children or autistic adults, or adults who are autistic that say the same thing as my ADHD and ADHD people. OCD, I've had a lot of people with OCD come forward. And then we've also tapped into this other whole community that has started coming forward that have medical needs that said, I never thought I'd be able to color again. And here I am. I have quadriplegics that are, I mean, literally, they were like, I never thought I'd be able to color again. And I am coloring in your coloring books. People with stroke recovery or other people who have lost motor skills will reach out to me and be like, this is my favorite part of PT, is that I get to color in your coloring books. And it's satisfying for them because the lines are so bold. It's easy to color within the lines with the bold lines. So they're not feeling defeated when they're having to do these with like lesser motor skills. And then people who are caregivers of people with dementia. Dementia patients do love to color, but a lot of times the pages are too detailed. They get overly stimulated, overwhelmed, and they just like shut down. And so a lot of caregivers are coming forward saying like, oh, this is exactly what my mom needed, or my grandma needed, or we needed our nursing home. And so those stories are the ones that now keep us motivated to keep creating, because it was like not at all what I saw coming when I started creating a simple and easy coloring book, but it's been amazing.
Wow. And that's amazing too, to have that, because it is so helpful for mental health. There's been study after study after study that has showed coloring in particular. Obviously, art therapy is a thing. I personally, my therapist is a licensed art therapist, and I've never been artistic. I've never, been like, I'm going to sit down and draw, or I'm going to sit down and color. Like, that's never been my go-to for coping. I'm a writer, so I'll usually like write a poem or even just journal or stream of consciousness. But doing this therapy, and she was like, do you want to try, some of the art stuff? And I was like, sure. And oh my gosh, like the difference that it makes in the ability to like to talk through, just like people who are doing it for physical ailments are using it in PT. It can be used alongside a licensed clinical mental health professional as well, because whether it's in a coloring book or on a canvas or whatever, you're creating as you're talking through the trauma. So as you're healing, you're creating. And there's just something about that. And me not knowing anything about, like, I know there's science behind it. I don't know the details of that. But like I said, I've used it with clients, and I used to I'm a licensed infant mental health specialist. And so I used to do in-home behavioral health, and obviously it's super helpful for kids. But I think that finally that kind of stigma is falling away, and there are more options for adults. And I think that the way you broke through barriers with your product and made what I consider like a crucial mental health tool, it's a tool that people can use to support their journey, accessible to everyone regardless of physical ability, is or nearly everyone, is amazing. Like, that's just really, really reputable. So
Yeah, and we do work with quite a few social workers and therapists as well. And one of the
okay,
things
great.
that they talk about with these is that, like, sometimes my clients need something to get, while we're talking about like a really traumatic thing, they do need something to help process that. And a lot of them will choose coloring. But what they're saying is, like, I give them a traditional coloring book, and then I like let them have to let them color the entire hour to finish the page, or I let them color for 5 or 10 minutes when we're talking about like this really traumatic thing and we're trying to process it. And then I'm like, take the coloring book away. Now let's get back to it. And that's also like not awesome. And so they love with these, it's kind of like a choose your own adventure. Like, do we need one coloring page and we can just talk about this thing while we process it and then we're done coloring? Do we need 5 coloring pages? Like, there is definitely something not only about the simplicity, but about the time restraints around it that open up so many more doors, not only for like busy working adults, but that like it actually will fit into their lifestyle, but also like the people that are using them for like therapeutic needs as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And it sounds like it's a very versatile product. And so how many like different versions, or are you always creating new art for the books?
Yeah, we're always creating new art for the books. Right now we have 13 mini coloring books. We're getting ready to release more as we go into Q4.
Wonderful.
We're also, because so many of my customers tell me that they color during the workday at their desk, coming this September, we're also going to be adding a few different product lines to our brand that incorporate coloring, but into different like useful office products.
Okay. Yeah. So normal day-to-day office supplies, but that
yes.
incorporate that.
Instead of having to just like scribble and doodle in the corners, like, or whatever, we're going to give you a little bit some different other options. So we're really excited to see how people like that. But we're basically always creating. So we have a quarterly subscription box. So that's like a never ending cycle of quarterly coloring books going out. For our quarterly subscription box, we have actually a daily coloring desk calendar. It's like 3x3 pages. They come with a little wooden block. A lot of people tell me they walk into the office in the morning and they can color it like while their computer boots up or while they're like getting set up for the day. And so many people have said, like, it puts me in such a better headspace when the first thing I do during my workday is for me. and not immediately giving to everyone else. And I
Mhm.
know there's a lot of people who sometimes feel guilty, like just like a whole other conversation, but feel guilty for doing those things for themselves. And since this is like a functional office supply, it's
Mhm.
literally your desk calendar. It'll say like August 6th on it, and I give you a 2-minute coloring prompt. It's like they don't feel guilty anymore because it's their calendar too.
Yes.
So
Yes.
those are mostly what comes in our subscription boxes. Those are our daily desk calendar that you can color, but we always have extra goodies in there as well.
Mhm.
Plus, we're always releasing new mini coloring books. We have digital downloads that go out on our emails. I mean, I feel like there's not a week that goes by where we're not moving forward on some sort of creation that has
New.
to
That's
happen. Yeah.
amazing. And I love that. Like, so I said that I wasn't one to like lean toward artistic expression beyond my writing, like to actual tactile arts. But when I'm stressed, but that's so funny because when you said that about doodling in the corners, every job where I had like a desk calendar, that one of the big ones that sat under my keyboard, all the corners are always like little swirls and doodles. And it was just subconscious. Like I didn't even really realize I was doing that. But like if you're in a stressful, conference call, or you just read a stressful email, like it just kind of the brain's way of trying to reset, I think.
Yes.
And so having like a desk calendar that's right there in front of you, that even on an as needed basis, even if you don't have it planned out, I love that. Like I'm a type B person, and I think you've created a product that's perfect regardless of that personality type, because those type A people can be like, okay, I do one a day at this time when I first talking, but your type B people can be like, when I need it, I do it.
Yes.
I take a break. And, I feel like I'm very like self-reflective, and I would be able to be like, okay, it's time for a coloring break, and having it right there. The accessibility is I love that, because that's what's key. And when I teach self-care classes all the time to professionals across different industries, across disciplines, and that's what I'm always hearing is the biggest barrier to self-care is time.
Yes, and I
Yeah.
have heard that over and over again. It's
Mhm.
because a lot of times the self-care, we for some reason have set it up to be like, go to the spa for the day, go buy this really expensive massage, like go do
Yes.
these things
Yes.
that like take a lot of time and cost a lot of money. And like that's not my personality, first of all.
No.
But also like most of America, I don't think can even do that either because they don't have the time or they don't have the finances. And
Yeah.
so something that um, is great about these that we hear is that it's convenient and easy. Like people tell me, they're like, I have one in my backpack for my work bag. I have one in my purse. I have one in my glove box. I have one like in my office desk drawer at home. We keep one on the coffee table. Like people tell me they keep these everywhere. And I remember a lot of the hobbies I used to do. If I had 30 minutes, let's say, which who
Mhm.
even has 30 minutes? I feel like sometimes.
Right.
So like,
Right. Exactly.
let's
Yeah.
just say you have 30 minutes. A lot of the hobbies that I used to do, I feel like it would take me 30 minutes just to gather the supplies and get them out and get them set up. And then I'd be like, well, there was my time. And
Yes.
so
Yes.
many people, even with these, they'll color with like desk highlighters. They'll color with like the flare pens that they already have at their desk. They just
Yes.
use those as coloring tools. It's not like you have to have your, you know, nice, huge set of markers that you have to go grab. It's just like, just grab whatever's right there. It's fine.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And what we would do at the Rape Crisis Center is the adult coloring books that we had, same thing. Like they were everywhere. They were in the lobby, and there was some in the lobby. There were some in each advocate's office. There were some in the support group room, and plenty for anybody. And then we would just put out like the little bulk like packs of crayons, or because even if it's just 5 colors,
Right.
that's not really what matters. They can still create something. They can still get that benefit that we're looking for, which is the stress relief.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. I really love the idea of this product. And as I said, like, I'm on a journey of doing more of incorporating art into healing. And so I'm wondering though, you shared like some examples of feedback that you've gotten. What, for you personally, what's the one story or piece of feedback that you've gotten that has resonated the most, that's like really stuck with you? I think we all have those in our career, especially if we're in some way in a helping profession, which I would consider your profession, because you're helping people, you're providing a service within a product, I think. And so, you know, we all have those stories that just like will stick with us forever. Do you have one yet with a brighter year?
Yeah, I mean, I think the whole ADHD, autism, ADHD, OCD, like that whole group of people that have come forward, I feel like they are, for me, just because there's so many of them. I'm not talking one or two people. I'm talking thousands of our customers have come forward and said this to me. And so I definitely think that community is really special to me because, because my household is full of neurospicy people. So I also just have like my heart understands those people. But also I just see like this whole group of kids that are coming up. Some of them that feel like they've aged out of coloring. And so when I see like these young professionals or even high school and college kids, and I hear from their moms, they're getting forwarded TikToks or text messages linking and saying like, this is what I want. Like, I need this for my study breaks. I need this for whatever. I do just like feel that mental health is so important. And so anything we can do to kind of help these kids and young adults like process those things makes me very happy. And if I can only play like the tiniest part in their journey, like that is fantastic to me. But then there's also the people who like the people with the actual medical like motor issues, whether they be the paraplegic, the quadriplegic, stroke patients. The first one that ever reached out to me, she is really young. I mean, I think she was in a car accident when she was like 17. I think she's like 21 now. And she had commented on one of my videos that just said, like, she had tagged one of her friends and she just said, I wish I could still color because these would have been like, I would have loved these. And I was like, that is such a weird comment, right? Mm-hmm. And so I like clicked on it. I went to her profile and she's like super young. She was in this horrible car accident. She's in a wheelchair now. And I like clicked around for a while and I was like, and I just emailed her and I was like, listen, I don't know if these are going to work for you at all. I see you have some limited motor skills with your hands. Like you do like get ready with me videos where you're doing like a limited amount of makeup. Like if you want to try them, like I'll just give them to you for free. Right. Like, let's do this.
Oh yeah.
And since then she's been like, oh, I love these. And she's posted about them and been like, them. Yeah. And now we're having these other people coming forward being like, I can't believe this exists. Like, I thought this was a chapter of my life that was closed forever. And I think that's definitely a smaller community. But when you can see even those individual stories of people being like, I never thought I could do this again. And now I can, like that, like lights a fire in me for sure.
Yeah, excuse my language, but I think too, like that just speaks volumes about that's how shit gets done in the social media age. Like really, that's how revolution happens. That's how we make, you know, radical changes in people's lives for the better, is through that like word of mouth, right? Because like you said, anyone else who is a paraplegic or in her situation or a similar ailment as what she's experiencing might not think that. But if they see, oh, here's someone like me, someone who's going through a struggle similar to mine, who has found that this is helpful, then they reach out and decide to do it. And so it's not just good for your bottom line in sales, but it also is getting the books into the hands of the people that need it. And I think that's, you know, your main goal. And yeah, so that's amazing. And I also wanted to say too, like going back to what you said about inspiring the young people, that like this is, coloring is a craft that can extend and should extend well into adulthood if you find it helpful. It's not something you have to just, you know, let go of. Like you have to let go of the diapers when you're potty trained. It's not the same thing.
Right.
And so, you know, it's just really interesting that you mentioned that, because I felt very similarly. And it's funny, the day I did my virtual interview, get to know you with Nate and Johnny at Free Mind, I was like, I'm going to have like a half hour to squeeze in right here, because I was volunteering my time to teach infant mental health and healthy relationships at an event called Adulthood Day that they did at my alma mater, my high school I graduated from, where they, for the seniors, they did basically a conference where they went into different classrooms and they were taking classes on professionals from the community volunteered their time to teach them on like real life, like this is what you need to know. And they needed someone to teach parenting and healthy relationships. I'm certified for both. So I was there teaching those. Both tough topics, because we're talking about like DV in the family, how that can impact babies' mental health. We're talking about domestic violence. We're talking about healthy relationships, unhealthy relationships. And so I was like, I've got to have something that whenever I've talked to teenagers, when you talk about these heavy topics, you have to incentivize them to participate. And I'm a discussion person, not a, I'm going to stand up here and lecture you. And so I was like, I went to the dollar store and I bought some stickers, and I had like Dr. Seuss and then like outer space stickers. And I was like, I don't think seniors in high school are going to be motivated to earn the stickers. Boy, was I wrong. They were like, I was like, do you guys still like stickers? They're like, yeah. And they love being able to pick, do you want Dr. Seuss? Or, and so many of them are like, Dr. Seuss stickers, these are amazing. And I'm like, you know, I paid a couple dollars for, you know, a couple hundred stickers, and I didn't have very many left. Like they wanted to earn the stickers. They were participating. And when I stepped out on my lunch break to do my meeting with Nate and Johnny, Nate was like, tell me about these presentations. How's it going? And I'm like, high school seniors like stickers. So, you know, like, it's just, I think that as a society, we try to push our young people into these boxes. And I think that it's just been these stereotypes all along. And I've been really inspired by the people that I've met in this younger generation. I'm a millennial, so I've been really inspired by a lot of the Gen Zs that I've met, because they're just unapologetically themselves.
Exactly.
And yes. And and I feel like as a millennial, and we're probably somewhat similar in age, like as an older millennial, I feel like, you know, like for us, it was like, why you're not perfect. You know, growing up, it was like, I don't look like the model on TV. I don't have the things that this celebrity has. I'm not interested in the sports and this and that. Like you were always feeling like why you were falling short. Mm-hmm. And I don't like, I think those messages are still being slung at this generation, but for the most part, the ones I've met, like they just don't care. They're just like, I am who I am. I like what I like. I do what I do. It is what it is.
Absolutely. I feel like Gen Z, they are not only like, I've talked about this a lot with my husband and my friends, because my kids they go to a public charter school. Mm-hmm. It's very diverse. And so we've always wondered, like, is it like so inclusive because we go to a charter school, or is it where people from all over the city like try to get into this school? It's just a lottery. It's just by chance, but yes, they do have a pre-K funded program, like government funded program. And to get into that program, English has to be a secondary language in your house or not a
Okay.
language at all in your house. And
Gotcha.
so, over half of the kids that come into kindergarten have gone through this pre-K program that come from these very diverse backgrounds, that sometimes the parents don't speak any English at all.
Mhm.
When my son graduated from 5th grade, they let the kids get up whose English was a secondary language in their home. They let all these kids get up and say to their families, like, welcome to 5th grade graduation in their native tongue. And there were 13 different languages up there. And these are for class. This
Wow.
is for a class of 160 kids are in each class.
Wow.
And there were 13 different languages being spoken.
Represented. Yeah.
And so sometimes we think like, oh, they just like don't care because there's just like so much diversity around them, like it doesn't matter. But then sometimes I think it really is just this generation. Like
Yeah.
they're like, well, no, this is what makes me happy. Like I dress like this, I color, I go to therapy, I play this sport, I like whatever it is. Like this is what makes me happy. This is me. Who cares?
I would agree because I'm in a very different setting. So my daughter went to kindergarten in Toledo at a public charter school that was also one of the bigger, more popular charter schools, and it was very diverse. And now we've moved back to where my husband and I are kind of from, in that area halfway between his family and mine. And we're in the far northwest corner. His family actually lives in Michigan. We're only 20 minutes away from my in-laws in Michigan. So we are the far northwest corner of Ohio in the middle of nowhere. And we live in a town that actually, the town we live in is the county seat. And because of migrant workers, as well as just immigrants, Latinx immigrants in general, we do have 13% population Hispanic identifying as of the last census, but every other town in our county is like 95% or more white. And so in her, she's got some diversity, but it's in our school, in our town, it's everyone you see is either white or of Hispanic descent. So they're very used to, a lot of the teachers are bilingual, English, Spanish, and that kind of thing. Her first grade teacher taught her some Spanish. So there's some diversity acceptance there, but overall, it's not very diverse. I'm not trying to get too into politics, but we're right in the heart of Trump country. The signage is out, with it being an election year. So that's very, very clear that there's not a lot of folks, or there are a lot of folks that maybe, at least based on their outward expression, don't value or honor diversity as much. But the young people are still, because I've worked in the public space, I've worked amongst a lot of young people in the community, I've spoken at some of these schools in the area, and they're very, some of the, like the way they express themselves, from their clothing to the activities they participate in. Like, I don't hear like anything about anything being uncool. Like, nobody, there's a lot of that respect for other people's individuality that I am not noticing amongst the older generations in our community. So I'm seeing a lot of similarity in what you're seeing in young people down in Texas. So that, hearing from you, like, that makes me really hopeful that this generation is just a new breed. Like, they are just like not going to be sucked into this, you should be like this.
Yeah. I mean, I hope so. And I will, like, something like this kind of goes on to this whole other side of my business that you kind of touched on earlier. You were saying like, you can help all of these people, but also like it's your bottom line, right? You make sales. And one thing that I am really passionate about, just because, I mean, I'm an empathetic person, hence your podcast name.
Yes.
Is that I really do, I'm like a cisgendered middle-class white American, right? Like white American female. And that in and of itself is privileged, right?
Absolutely.
And one thing I'm really passionate about, and I try to use my platform for, is creating coloring pages to represent different groups of people that don't normally get coloring pages. So we do have a whole line of LGBTQIA plus coloring pages,
Wonderful. Yeah.
which we love. And I had a dad reach out to me. I have this really cute picture. It's like a classic, like American white picket fence, like flowers in the background coming off the roof, right? And it's like this really just idealistic, like all American family, right? But it's like two
Yeah.
dads and this little boy. And one of the dads reached out to me and he was like, I literally never thought I could not only color a coloring page with my husband, but also with our son that represented our family, because those don't exist. And I have this past year this past quarter for a subscription box, we did this beautiful illustration of these three women. Two of them were in hijabs. One of them didn't have a head covering. Because I talked to a lot of people and she was like, listen, like that's what my family gatherings are. Like some of the women have chosen not to wear head coverings. A lot of them still do. So like when we go out or we go out to coffee, like this is authentically what we look like, right? And so I am trying to capture some of those other things that are happening all around us and give them representation, not only because do they deserve to like have that coloring page that represents their life, but I also feel like because someone in my family has OCD, and so we're very familiar with exposure therapy.
Yes.
There's also something about every little tiny exposure that I can give to all of these different groups, right? I feel like hopefully I don't even know if like, it's not like normalized, like that's not the word I want to use, but for people who are stuck in these like white communities, everything that I can be like, expose them to these different groups, I hope it makes them less different. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely. And representation does matter. We hear that all the time, and it's so, so important. We've had I feel like anytime there's a big issue about representation, that's what it is anytime you see authentic representation, then there's a controversy. And so I have to commend you, because that's incredibly brave, because it would be so easy as a white cis het person with all that privilege to just do what you know and only produce products that represent you and the people that you spend most of your time with. And in today's climate with I used to work in a library, in a public library up until recently, and I still teach library professionals and library leaders empathetic leadership and different topics. And obviously, you know where this is going, like with the book bans and with the question about not, there's a lot of people who are advocating not to have this representation in the public and in the hands of young people. And so to very bravely be like, this is my company, this is what we're going to do, these books are for everyone, and we're going to make books for everyone. I think that takes a lot, because it'd be so, so easy to hide behind our privilege.
Oh, and it's also like every single day, every single time we have to create these books, it pushes me so far out of my comfort zone. And I feel like that's also a really important place for me to be sometimes, because it's like a good realization that a lot of these people are uncomfortable all the time because America makes them uncomfortable all the time, right?
Yes.
And so it's like every time I have to push and try and work to create these that are not just like super stereotypical. Like I want them to be authentic and to truly represent these communities.
Yes.
Like those conversations are hard, right? Like
Yes.
I have to reach out to people who I sometimes don't know, or sometimes aren't in my friend group. Like if it's my friend, like that's easy, right? But if these people who I don't know, who aren't in my friend group, and then if mistakes happen, or if you hope that they don't, but if they do, just being like, I'm sorry, I tried my best, like let's have this conversation, like how can I fix it, not only for like your customer experience, but like for future customer experiences.
Yes.
And so it's hard, but I do feel like that is also really important.
It is really important. And being out, I think and I've gone to a lot of DEI type trainings. I've done some of those trainings, led some of those trainings. I've been in the social justice field my entire career. And that is the message that I've gotten from every expert on the topic, is you have to be willing to go out of your comfort zone, because so many of us white folks don't realize that it's a privilege to choose to be comfortable, because the folks that you're representing in creating those products are uncomfortable 99% of the time. And so in order to try to make that more equitable, we have to be willing to give up some of that comfort. And I think that's where you see the controversy. And that's really because it's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable for you to see that book on the shelf in the public library that represents something that you don't understand, or someone that you don't understand. And that's where the controversy starts, because people want to protect that comfort that they've come to believe is their right. And it's not a right, it's a privilege.
Yeah. It's interesting, but I just hope that like those of us who can and who will push ourselves out of that comfort zone, like hopefully we're like making tiny little steps for like the good of society. And that's one thing I talk about with my business coach a lot, is that like this business has scaled very, very quickly, and we're making revenue numbers that like I never ever thought would ever happen. And when I told her this, because I didn't tell very many people, when we passed this huge milestone, she was like, well, first of all, know that like you never have to like mute yourself or play down your things with me, which I think is also really great, to find a group of women who will like celebrate those with you, because society won't always find that acceptable for women to celebrate big things like that. But also what the conversation was is like, I have this ongoing conversation with her, is because we talk about business goals, and I'm like, I'm not motivated by money. Like I never have been. I didn't come from money. Like I'm really comfortable. Like we don't have a ton of extra, but like we're comfortable, right? And we don't strive to have a lot, we strive to like have time and freedom and time, like things like that. And so I was telling her, I was like, we passed this milestone, and like, as you know, the money is not important to me, but every single woman-owned business who can cross these big milestones and can celebrate them, I just feel like we're just like tapping on that glass ceiling, right? And every woman who can do that, hopefully someday will turn the tide on that as well. And I was telling her, I was like, I'm not motivated by money, and I'm not one of those people to like boast on like big milestones and things like that. And I was like, but the thing that fires me up about that is I want little girls to see what you can do as a female business owner, especially in a world that female stay-at-home moms are pushed into this world of like MLMs, or like get quick, get money quick, or like all of these
scams.
And
absolutely.
Those really work for a lot of people. And it's amazing if you are one of those people, and they don't work for a lot of other people. Like I was like, I want little girls to see that like there's women out there who are doing it, and not just like what I refer to sometimes, I might offend people, I hope I don't, but like playing business owner, because women aren't given the tools and the mentorship and the help that they need to be real business owners so many of the times. And so like showing girls like, you can do this, like look at these.
At the end of the day, if you're doing something like that, you're selling someone else's product. It's someone else's dream. It's someone else's passion. And you can, and that kind of brings me to, I wanted to ask you in the direction that you were going, and we're getting toward the end of the hour, but kind of what I think will be a good wrap up, since you're talking about that and talking about inspiring other women. If you were in an elevator. So you've got the 30 seconds. And for whatever reason, you know that the young woman you're in an elevator with you've never met her before, but you know that she's in that place where she's just being brutalized by the corporate ladder. She's, butting her head up against the glass ceiling, is underappreciated, isn't happy with what she's doing. She's grinding for someone else's benefit. And, but what is keeping her from going out on her own is what is keeping so many women is that fear and not having those examples and that representation set forth for them. So what would you tell that woman, that young woman, in the 30 seconds that you have with her?
And I talk about this often with different groups that I talk to or I'm part of. First and foremost is be a lifelong learner. Like, even when we are at the height of like the busiest season, the busiest thing, everything is going right, I'm always learning whatever I can. So just always be a learner. Test and try has been the biggest thing for me. You're going to test things, they're not going to work, but try something else. You will eventually find the thing that works. Keep working hard, but more importantly, take care of yourself. Because the American like hustle, and that's like you prove yourself because you're hustling the hardest. Like I believed that for a very long time. And it put me into it wasn't until I had kids that I realized, like, this isn't who I want to be. This isn't the mom I want to be. This isn't the example I want to be setting up for my kids, right? Because generationally, when they get big, they're going to be like, well, this is the only example I ever had, which was like work constantly. Like, I'm trying to break some of those things. And so, yeah, just like work hard, but also like take care of yourself.
Absolutely.
For sure. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for your time, Shanti. I really appreciate it. And thank you, everybody, for listening. This has been Empathy Espresso with Shanti Grossman. And I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording.
Okay.
If you're an aspiring entrepreneur or one that's looking to expand, contact the Free Mind Network today, and we'll help you scale. We'll help you start. We're going to be there for you, in your corner.
You know my story, right? Rise to fame, from the pain to glory, right?